TomoNews presents Pollution. Rio Olympics will have a whole lot of poo-poo in the water. Rio de Janeiro is a great city with beautiful coastlines and breathtaking views, which is why it's hosting the 2016 Summer Olympics. The reason it takes your breath away is because of the notoriously filthy water, which is heavily polluted with raw sewage and garbage. When bidding to host the Games, Rio promised the IOC it would eliminate 80% of the sewage and fully regenerate the lagoon in which rowing and kayaking events would be held. Rio now says it's not going to happen because there's not enough commitment, funds, and energy, blah, blah, blah. So, not only is the water filled with crap, it's also teeming with bacteria and viral pathogens. Athletes have been asked to get hepatitis A vaccinations, polio vaccine boosters, and to take the oral typhoid vaccine. Boats and oar handles will be constantly blasted with bleach. Athletes will also have to douse themselves with a hand sanitizer, as well as shower immediately after races. But hey, a little bit of Montezuma's revenge here and there is worth a gold medal. Or is it?
Rio de Janeiro water is too polluted for 2015 Olympic Games. An investigation conducted by the Associated Press found that the waters where athletes will compete during the Rio de Janeiro 2016 Olympic Games are full of human sewage and could present a serious threat to athletes' health. 4 rounds of viral and bacterial water testing were conducted by a top Brazilian virologist on behalf of the Associated Press at Olympic water sites in Rio de Janeiro. The testing looked for human adenovirus, enterovirus, and rotaviruses. The test results consistently found counts of active and infectious human adenoviruses, which can cause diarrhea, violent vomiting, respiratory problems, and other illnesses. When Rio de Janeiro bid to host the 2016 Olympic Games, the city said it would clean up raw sewage flowing into the Guanabara Bay and reduce it by 80%. But by early 2015, the amount of sewage treated before reaching the bay had actually only reached 49%, up from 17%. From August 5th to 21st, 2016, more than 10,000 athletes from over 200 countries are expected to compete in the Olympic Games in Rio. Nearly 1,400 of them will reportedly come into contact with the waters. Brazilian authorities insist the water quality in the race lanes will be safe by the time of the competitions.
Ventilation corridors may be China's solution to heavy smog. China's capital city is planning to construct ventilation corridors in a bid to tackle the country's air pollution. Densely populated cities tend to generate more energy and waste heat, resulting in a warmer environment than surrounding rural areas. Measures to curb pollution in Beijing have led to air quality improving only marginally. In 2015, the city had 186 days of up to par air quality, up 14 from 2014. To reduce smog, the capital is planning to build ventilation corridors. These are designed to relieve a city's heat and pollution by improving urban wind flow. The corridors will be created by connecting parks, rivers, lakes, highways, and small building blocks. 5 primary corridors, over 500 meters wide, will run from the northern suburbs to the south. Secondary corridors measuring more than 80 meters are also planned. The corridors will reportedly allow northern winds to blow through Beijing during severe winter smog spells. Experts also suggest curbing the amount and height of city center buildings, as well as adding more green spaces. Beijing saw its worst smog spell from November to December of 2015. The air pollution was so thick it blocked views and prompted authorities to issue a red alert warning.
The craziest air pollution protection masks people wear in China. Air quality and pollution levels have gotten so bad in Beijing that the government has issued a red alert for the first time, warning people to stay inside with their air purifiers or face one of the smoggiest polluted atmospheric conditions on Earth. Those that choose to brave the choking toxic smog should probably heed our list of the most fashion-forward and craziest air pollution masks. First up is the Airwaves mask created by Frog Shanghai. It connects to a smartphone app to measure pollution levels and keep wearers in the know about air quality in different neighborhoods. If you want other people to see your smile but still breathe cleaner air, there's also the nasal air purifier made by Mai Xingren. But only nose breathing is covered, and any mouth breaths are still going to be pretty polluted. Another nasal option is the InfaPure invisible air filtration mask. But if you don't like sticking stuff up your nose and you still want your face to be visible, there's the Sunny Smile transparent mask. This Toto Bobo mask is somewhere between the transparent masks and the full face coverage filters. If you like the vintage look, you can always go to the Army Surplus store and snag one of these retro World War II style masks. For a more modern style, there are all kinds of apocalypse chic choices, as showcased at the 2014 China Fashion Week by designer Yin Peng. Joggers and runners need to be especially careful when taking deep breaths of pollution while getting some exercise. Cyclists are also vulnerable to the air quality problems in China, so British artist Matt Hope designed this breathing bicycle that uses the power generated by pedaling to filter the air for the person riding it to breathe. Another innovation in air purification by artist Chu Chi uses a natural solution by attaching a breathing apparatus to a box with a plant inside that produces pure oxygen. These artist mock-ups show clothing that has the face mask built in. Are these the future of breathing? Imagine what these kids will be wearing on their faces by the time they're old enough to choose for themselves. These people certainly have some interesting taste, and it looks like there's a lot more where that came from.
New report says plastic will outweigh fish in the oceans by 2050. By 2050, plastic rubbish in the oceans will outweigh fish, according to a new report by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation released at the World Economic Forum in Davos this week. The United States, Europe, and Asia together account for 85% of plastics production, roughly split between the US and Europe on one side and Asia on the other. Some 95% of plastic packaging produced each year is lost to the economy after a single use. Out of all the plastic produced every year, only 5% is recycled effectively. Around 40% is buried in landfills, and about 32% reaches the oceans. This corresponds to dumping the contents of one garbage truck into the ocean every minute. The production of plastic, which now stands at around 311 million tons a year, is expected to quadruple by 2050. This will bring the ratio of plastic to fish in the ocean, calculated according to weight, from 1 to 5 to more than 1 to 1. The report urges people to take action and to rethink the way we use and recycle plastic. It also suggests that manufacturers help reduce plastic waste by producing not only plastic that is reusable but also compostable plastics, a new generation of plastics that are biodegradable through composting.
New research has revealed that loud military sonar used by navies to detect submarines causes stark behavioral changes in whales, even resulting in mass strandings for multiple species of whale and dolphin. The studies, partly funded by the US Navy, simulated military sonar signals, sounded at 200 decibels, 3 to 10 kilometers away from the whales. Whales affected by the noise pollution initially stopped both feeding and swimming, before quickly swimming away from the noise. Some performed unusually deep and long dives. Beaked whales, the species most commonly affected by mass strandings, were found to be highly sensitive to sonar. No internationally accepted standards on underwater noise pollution currently exist.
EPA accidentally releases heavily polluted water into Colorado River. The amount of heavily polluted water the US Environmental Protection Agency accidentally spilled into the Animas River in Colorado while working on a wastewater treatment project has now reached 3 million gallons. On August 5th, a plug holding back contaminated water at the abandoned Gold King mine was released by mistake. The water contains high levels of heavy metals and sediment, including lead, arsenic, cadmium, iron, zinc, and copper. The polluted water flowed along the Animas River in Colorado and then into the San Juan River in New Mexico. At the current time, the mine is discharging anywhere between 200 to 700 gallons per minute of polluted water. Emergency settling ponds have built to try to contain the water and treat it, while fish have also been placed in the waters to check for harmful effects on local wildlife. In the meantime, farmers have been asked not to use the water, but the warning only came one day after the accidental release. Pollution from China ruins US effort to cut ozone levels on West Coast. A study published in Nature Geoscience claims the US's effort to cut ozone levels have gone to waste due to pollution arriving on the West Coast from China. From 2005 to 2010, the US managed to cut ozone-producing nitrous oxide emissions by 20% by imposing strict standards for motor vehicles and industry. During the same period of time, however, China's growth pushed its own ozone levels up by about 7%. Half of the increase in China came from the ground up, while the other half descended from the stratosphere, although some of that pollution may have been blown to China from India and other parts of Asia, in the same way that the dominant westerly winds blow China's air pollution into the troposphere straight across the Pacific Ocean and into the United States, causing ozone levels to rise again. High levels of pollution can cause respiratory problems, damage to crops, and of course global warming. According to researcher Willem Verstraeten, local and national efforts to fight pollution could have a limited impact if the problem is not also dealt with at an international level.
Village in China dying from cancer due to pollution. In Hunan, located in central China, a village known to locals as the Widow's Village is dying from cancer. Over 60% of the village residents suffer from one form of cancer or another. There are just over 200 families living in the village, but 10% of working-age males have died from cancer in the last 10 years. This is because on one side of the village is a metal smelting factory, on the other side of the village is a chemical factory, and on yet another side is a coal processing factory. The village is usually blanketed in a low-hanging dark cloud of pollution. On particularly bad days, residents must seal their doors and windows to keep out the dust and pollution. The villagers have petitioned the government to move the factories, but their pleas and requests have been ignored. Over 60% of the residents suffer from cancer, the most common cancers being liver or lung cancer. The youngest resident to die from cancer was just 32 years old. Many couples also suffer from cancer. Their own fates and their children's fates are unknown and held in the balance because of the disease. One resident demanded, "Do all the men need to die before the government will pay attention to us?" Then again, the government could just be trying to wait them out. If everyone dies, there will be no one petitioning the factories to move.
500 sea lions dead, possibly after eating tons of plastic. Some 500 dead sea lions were discovered decomposing on a beach 250 miles north of the Peruvian capital, Lima, possibly after ingesting massive amounts of plastic, polluting the waters. The North Pacific Gyre, one of the world's largest ocean gyres, is often referred to as the Pacific Trash Vortex due to the high concentrations of floating plastic debris. Due to rotational currents, trash is captured from across the Pacific Ocean, including the coastal waters off North America and Japan, and then is gradually moved towards the North Pacific Gyre Center, where it becomes trapped. The Pacific Trash Vortex is estimated to be around 2,200 kilometers long and 800 kilometers wide, almost 3 times the size of Spain and Portugal combined. The vortex is made up of some 100 million tons of plastic, including large objects or disintegrated objects and particles. About half of them float atop the ocean's surface, while the remaining, heavier half can be found in the water columns below it or along the bottom of the ocean. The United Nations Environment Program estimates that worldwide, each square mile of ocean water contains 46,000 pieces of garbage. Plastic does not biodegrade, meaning it does not break down into natural elements. Rather, it photodegrades, gradually splitting into small, tiny particles. When small enough, it can be ingested by aquatic organisms, and therefore is able to enter the food chain.
Deadly dam collapse wreaks havoc on Brazilian town. A rural community was devastated after a dam owned by Brazilian mining company Samarco ruptured for unknown reasons. Homes and vehicles in a mining town in southeastern Brazil were smothered in thick rivers of toxic mud on Thursday, after a dam collapse around 4:20 p.m. sent industrial sludge 4 miles down the mountain, affecting more than 600 people from the nearby town of Bento Rodrigues. The surface area of the spillage, mining waste made up of metal fillings, water, and chemicals, was equivalent to 10 football fields. At least 17 were killed in the disaster, with more than 50 injured, and 45 others still missing. Search and rescue efforts are ongoing, but teams are hampered by the lack of electricity and difficulty in accessing affected areas.
An otter with asthma requires an inhaler at the Seattle Aquarium. An otter at the Seattle Aquarium is the first ever to be diagnosed with the lung disease asthma and has to use an inhaler every day. The Seattle Aquarium's 1-year-old otter, Mishka, suffers from asthma, an inflammation of the lungs' airways. Smoke from wildfires has polluted the air in Seattle, causing breathing problems for asthmatic people and animals. Using an adapter designed for cats, Mishka's trainer administers the same asthma medicine used by humans. To teach the otter to use her inhaler, Mishka's trainer places a piece of food in the mouthpiece. Another possible cause of Mishka's asthma is the lack of genetic diversity in Washington's otter population, a problem known to increase rates of disease.
Miami's nuclear power plant is leaking radioactive material. A nuclear power plant is leaking radioactive material into the water near Miami, according to a recent study published by the Miami-Dade County. Turkey Point Nuclear Power Plant, located in Homestead just south of Miami, started serving the area in the early 1970s. It uses an extensive canal network for its cooling water purposes. The cooling canals began running dangerously high after the plant's expansion to increase power output by 15% in 2013. The situation worsened in the following year, when temperatures spiked after a summer drought hit it. The company somehow obtained permission to operate the canals at 104 degrees, the hottest in the nation. The company then began to cool down the canals by pumping huge amounts of fresh water from a nearby canal and from the Floridian aquifer. However, the hot salty water then leaked back into the Biscayne Bay, with water sampling in December and January showing tritium levels at the bottom of the bay are up to 215 times higher than normal in ocean water. Meanwhile, Florida Power and Light Company insisted that it has collected its own data on impacts to Biscayne Bay and has not seen any indication of a large pollution problem.
NASA warns that Indonesia's forest fires could worsen. NASA warns that the suffocating haze blanketing Southeast Asia for the past several weeks may worsen and become the worst ever recorded in the region. Illegal slash-and-burn farming in southern and eastern Sumatra, as well as on the island of Kalimantan, causes Indonesia to endure annual bouts of hazardous smog. The expansion of small farms and the growth of palm oil or rubber corporations in recent years has intensified forest fires in the country. The haze caused by this year's fires has spread to various parts of Indonesia and has deeply impacted air quality in Singapore and Malaysia. Pollutant standards index readings of over 300 are considered hazardous to human health. Singapore has recorded readings of up to 341 this year, while Indonesia has reportedly seen readings of up to 2,000. NASA researchers have warned that if Indonesia's current drier-than-usual weather conditions persist, the haze will worsen. Indonesia's Southeast Asian neighbors are pressuring the archipelago to solve the haze issue, with the Singapore Foreign Ministry reportedly saying that Indonesia is showing a complete disregard for our people and their own. The Jakarta Globe reports that an Indonesian official responded by accusing Singapore of acting like a child and making all of this noise. Indonesia has rejected Singapore's help to fight the fires.
Ships collide. Cargo ship grounded in the Chesapeake Bay. A sailboat and a container ship collided in the Chesapeake Bay off the Virginia coast on Tuesday as gusting winds caused a bulk carrier to run aground and a dozen ships to drag anchor. Winds gusted up to 70 miles per hour on Tuesday in the Chesapeake Bay, the U.S. Coast Guard said in a news release. The bad weather caused the 79-foot rig vessel Petite and the 1,065-foot container ship MSC Charleston to collide at about 7:30 p.m. There were no reports of injuries or damage. About an hour later, the 751-foot bulk carrier Ornac, anchored at Lynnhaven Anchorage, ran aground near First Landing State Park. Winds with speeds up to 70 miles per hour at Cape Henry caused 12 ships anchored at Lynnhaven Anchorage to drag anchor.
Southern California gas leak could take months to fix. Southern California Gas Company estimates the natural gas leak in Porter Ranch, which began on October 23rd, could take months to fix. The damaged well, located at the Aliso Canyon storage facility, extends 8,748 feet down to a non-porous layer of capstone, which keeps the stored gas from escaping. The leak is thought to have been caused by a hole in a pipe about 500 feet below the surface, which lets the gas fill the cavity surrounding the pipe and travel down to the bottom of the well. From there, it reaches up to the surface through the soil. SoCal Gas tried to plug the well by injecting it with a cocktail of brine, mud, water, potassium chloride, and bentonite clay, while it was blocked by an ice plug formed by the bonding of water molecules and methane. Using special tubing, it then injected the well with antifreeze, which managed to dissolve the plug and resume the mud cocktail injections into the pipe. But the pressure of the gas was strong, and engineers worried that if they pushed too hard, they could cause another rupture and a greater leak. Instead, SoCalGas decided to drill 2 relief wells to intersect the pipe at its juncture with a capstone for the insertion of the brine and mud. Drilling on the first relief well began on December 4th. Drilling on the second well will start on January 20th in the event that the first one misses the target or is unable to stop the leak. The company aims to plug the methane breach between late February and late March.
Workers at Japan's stricken Fukushima nuclear power plant discovered leakage of 300 cubic meters of highly contaminated water on Monday, the worst such incident since the March 2011 meltdown. At about 9:50 a.m., a TEPCO worker on patrol discovered a pool of more than 100 liters of highly contaminated water, thought to have escaped from a concrete barrier drain valve. TEPCO said the water level from storage tank number 5 dropped by 3 meters, meaning that about 300 tons of radioactive water had been lost. From Monday to Tuesday, about 10 tons were lost, indicating this amount may have leaked every day over the past 30 days. The radiation level, measured around 50 centimeters above the toxic water, stood at about 100 millisieverts per hour. TEPCO claims none of the water has flowed directly into the Pacific. The water was apparently contained by a waterproof barrier surrounding the tanks. According to the International Commission on Radiological Protection, exposure to 100 millisieverts increases the incidence of death by cancer by 0.5%. According to a TEPCO official, hundreds of tanks were built to store the contaminated water. Some of them have experienced similar leaks since 2012, but not on this scale.
Australian river catches fire near fracking site. A river in Australia bubbling with methane gas has been filmed bursting into flames with a spark from a kitchen lighter. Video of the Condamine River set alight was posted online by New South Wales Green Party MP Jeremy Buckingham. Buckingham blamed nearby fracking operations for the leak of methane gas into the river. There are several coal seam gas fracking mines in the area, and leaks were first reported in 2012. Fracking miners drill a pipeline into the ground, which then curves horizontally and can be several miles long. Fracking fluid, which is made up of water, sand, and toxic chemicals, is then pumped into the pipeline at high pressure. The pressure forces cracks to form in rocks along the pipeline, which the sand holds open. Natural gas then flows back up through the pipeline towards the fracking well. Critics say high pressure from fracking causes more cracks to form in rock. Methane gas escapes from these cracks and moves towards the Earth's surface, creating flammable water and releasing toxic fumes. Buckingham said the flames on the Condamine River continued to burn for more than an hour. He said fugitive emissions could be a major contributor to climate change and make gas as dirty as burning coal. He also called for fracking to be banned.
An oil spill from an offshore pipeline leak in Thailand has reached the popular tourist destination of Koh Samet. The leak took place about 20 kilometers southeast of the Map Ta Phut port in Rayong province. It was reported that a pipeline at a single point mooring leaked about 50,000 liters of crude oil. The oil slick was about 800 meters wide and 2.5 kilometers long. The slick drifted to Prao Bay on Koh Samet. Authorities have closed the bay as workers were working to remove the oil from the beach and nearby waters.